The Florida Historical Society presents Florida Frontiers is made possible in part by the Jessie Ball DuPont Fund and by
The historic Rossiter House Museum and Gardens is in the O'Galley section of Melbourne, Florida. Preserved as it was in the early 20th century, historic tours of the Rossiter House include antiques, artifacts, and family heirlooms, and the 1865 Houston Family Cemetery. The last resident of the home was successful businesswoman and philanthropist Caroline P. Rossiter. The historic Rossiter House Museum and Gardens is available for weddings and other special events.
Created in the late 19th century, the community of Cassadaga, Florida is the second most important center for spiritualism and the only one in the southern United States. Located about 3/4 of a mile south of Lake Helen and 6 miles from DeLand, Cassadaga was originally intended to be the winter residence for spiritualists from Lilydale, New York. The spiritualists of Cassadaga were welcomed by residents of Volusia County who believed Cassadagans would benefit the local economy. By the early 20th century, spiritualists were living in Cassadaga year-round. Spiritualists believe in an infinite intelligence and direct communication with the spirit world. In 1880, George P. Colby filed a homestead claim for nearly 75 acres of land in central Florida with the intention of creating a community for spiritualists. In 1894, he established Cassadaga. Welcome to Florida Frontiers, presented by the Florida Historical Society. I'm Ben Brotmarkle. In January 1895, Colby gave a warranty deed of 35 acres to the Southern Cassadaga Spiritualist Camp Meeting Association, the organization that still governs life in Cassadaga.
So George Colby, originally he was born in upstate New York, and then his family moved to Cherry Grove, Minnesota. When he was 12 years old, after they moved to Cherry Grove, Minnesota, they were actually Unitarians when they were in upstate New York. But when they moved to Cherry Grove, Minnesota, the whole town was Baptist. So it was known in that town on the 12th birthday that they would do a baptism. And what they did is they did it in the lake. But since he was born in January of 1848, and when he was 12 years old, when they did the baptism, they put them in the lake when it was frozen. But they left him in a little too long, his heart stopped, and he was seen to the other side. At that point, he was able to connect with his Native American guide, Seneca, and he was able to talk to an uncle that he had in spirit. And at that point, it changed his whole life.
He was in a seance in Iowa, and he had a Indian spirit guide named Seneca. And during the seance, Seneca came through to him and said, "You are supposed to start a spiritual center in the southeastern part of the United States." So, being a good spiritualist, he follows his guide. And the next spring, he gathered a couple friends and boarded a train to Chicago from Iowa. And from there, they boarded a train to Jacksonville, Florida. And from there, he boarded a steamboat and came down the St. Johns River. And evidently, he was told to get off at Blue Springs Landing, and which is a very famous spring here in Florida.
His guide Seneca explained to him that he should come south and start a spiritualist camp. Well, George Colby started here. When he came down, he started up at Jacksonville, came all the way to Blue Springs Landing, got off, and then walked most of the way, all the way here, and he found Cassadaga. That was through his guide Seneca. And a lot of people don't know. His guide Seneca, the guide The Unknown, and the Philosopher. There were 3 guides that were actually with George Colby as he came into the organization. And he found this property, and just before it was supposed to be getting by somebody else, he got a mule and he went to Gainesville. I think it was Gainesville at that point, and had to go ahead and sign the deed and quitclaim deed for this property.
He came to Central Florida. His spirit guide, Seneca, touched in with him at the time and told him that he was going to be forming a spiritualist camp in Florida, and he needed to come here basically because he also had consumption, tuberculosis, and he would find property here that had a spring, and that he would drink that water, and that water would cure him, which it did.
But he was trying to convince the northern spiritualists up in Lilydale, which sat on Cassadaga Lake in Cassadaga, New York, to make this their winter home. And there were several rivals. One was down in De Leon Springs, and I guess there was some other place. But he eventually won out. The story is that he wasn't a wealthy man at all. He needed to stake a claim in the state of Florida. And so evidently there were three ruffians that were trying to compete to take this land from him. And so one night they were celebrating. They were going to get this, at that time was 35 acres, and they were getting drunk, and he heard about it and got on a donkey and headed off to, I think it was Tallahassee, where they recorded the 35 acres before these guys even woke up from their drunken stupor. So that's how Cassadaga, Florida started.
Lilydale, the mother church, would shut down in the winter because of the snowfall. And so this was giving them a chance to come to Florida and proceed to do their readings here. But and a lot of people get confused with that Southern Cassadaga Spiritualist Camp Meeting Association, but there really wasn't a camp per se. It was just mediums and a place for them to go, and we went from there.
Although George P. Colby was confident that his property would become a new center for spiritualism, the Spiritualist Association from Lilydale, New York, visited many Central Florida towns in search of a suitable winter residence before deciding on Cassadaga. De Leon Springs was a leading contender as a site for a spiritualist community, and St. Petersburg, Tampa, Tarpon Springs, St. Augustine, Daytona, and New Smyrna were among other sites that were considered. Mediums Emma J. Huff and Marion Skidmore helped to found the Spiritualist Assembly in Lilydale, and with Eddie Pattengale played an important role in establishing Cassadaga. In 1893, the three women wrote a letter discussing the merits of Cassadaga as a town for spiritualists.
In this, they're talking about the advantages and disadvantages. And one of the disadvantages was that there was no way to get people in here then. And it was about the time Flagler was starting his railroad. And so they took that into consideration. And that came to pass, and it came to be, and that's why they actually picked this spot instead of a different spot, and they had several to pick from.
Originally, they were looking at De Leon Springs, and when they were looking in De Leon Springs, they were looking at that area, and George was like, hey, I've got property, but he knew the whole time this was going to be the place. So at that moment, they decided to come here. They looked, and they said he sold the land, but he did it for the minimum of $10, because that was the minimum you had to do it for back then. And eventually we became what we are today.
George P. Colby donated 35 acres of his property to the Southern Cassadaga Spiritualist Camp Meeting Association, and over the years they acquired another 20 acres. People can own their homes here, but the association owns the property on which they sit.
It was donated by Mr. Colby to only and ever be a spiritualist camp. And so you could come here and you could build a house, or you can be a member and buy a house. The house would be yours, but the land would forever belong to the spiritualist camp.
The two apartment buildings, Harmony Hall and Brigham Hall, are some of the oldest buildings surviving. We lost a lot of wooden houses and structures to fires over the years. In fact, George Colby's home was burned in the 60s. I think Harmony and Brigham were somewhere like 1898 or something like that. My house is right next to Harmony Hall. It was built in 1906. It's a 3-story Victorian, and it's got the carving on the tree, and it's That's from a spirit within the house that passed away, a little girl at 7.5.
They built the hotel at one point, which back then was owned by the camp. And it was a 3-story wooden structure, and there's one just like it, the old hotel that stands in Lilydale to this day. It's identical to that. And then we had what we call now the Andrew Jackson Davis Hall and the camp bookstore. Back then, it was it was a barn-like structure, and then it turned into a building. And it wasn't until 1905 when it became a true building.
That's an important building because at one point we used to hold a lot of services there. But the building has changed as it has reinvented itself because we've enlarged the bookstore. We've enlarged the place in the back to have meetings. We used to have church services in here, but when it got too hot to have services in here, the services then were placed in the Davis building because it had air conditioning. This place didn't get air conditioning until into the 60s. So we didn't have any air conditioning in this building. So that was our main building that we did all our events in at one point.
The Colby Memorial Temple was the first building constructed in Cassadaga in 1895. It was remodeled in 1918, but the building was torn down and replaced with a new temple in 1923. That building remains the centerpiece of the community.
A lot of people come here for healing. That's what draws them here, either healing through visiting a medium and having a message from a loved one, or just hands-on healing through spiritualist healing. And so we offer that in Colby Temple every Sunday during our services. At our Wednesday evening night service, we offer the healing as well. So some people actually come for just the healing on Wednesday nights and not the message service. So Colby Memorial Temple is very important in that regard.
One of the beautiful things about Colby Temple is that we really try to create a safe place for people to come of all faiths and all religions. We don't have any particular dogma that we follow here. We feel that we are here to have people explore what spirituality is for them. And we feel that there's a difference between religion and spirituality. And if I was to coin us as a temple, we support people in finding out what God is for them. And we try to create a place where different perspectives are offered so people can figure it out for themselves.
The community of Cassadaga is designated as an historic district listed in the National Register of Historic Places. This tiny Central Florida town is considered by people around the world as a center for the religion, science, and philosophy of spiritualism. At the core of this belief system is the idea that life continues after physical death and that mediums can be used to communicate with those who have passed on to the spirit world.
Spiritualism is a science, philosophy, and religion of the continuity life. So in spiritualism, we believe life continues on after a change called death, but we don't discriminate against anyone who has gone through their change called death. So you look at it as molecular structure change, kind of like a caterpillar turns to a butterfly, or water that turns to ice, turns to steam, then turns back to water. It's a molecular structure change that water goes through. So we believe as human beings, when we transition to the spirit side of life, we go through a molecular structure change called death. With that said, it's like my Nana's in spirit, and I don't say, hey Nana, sorry, can't talk to you anymore. As spiritualists, we believe in continuation of life and continuing to talk to our family, friends, and loved ones in spirit. So we continue to talk to them. We don't discriminate against them for going through a change called death.
Do we preach from the Bible? No, we don't, because we preach from the spiritualism of it. I've taken world religions, and it took me quite a while to get through that class. It took me probably a year and a half, 2 years. We studied every religion in the world, including African Caribbean. And they all lead back to the same thing. Somewhere in each religion, you're going to have the passing of the soul, going on to the other side. We just believe that we have the ability by meditating, by doing certain individual things, that if you have the abilities to do those, or you can learn to do those, that you will be able to be in contact.
We believe in infinite spirit. It's Mother, Father, God. We believe in infinite spirit. We believe that God is in everything. everywhere. God is in everything, not one specific space, not one specific being. God is in everything. And our belief correlates with other belief systems because we believe in God. We do believe in an afterlife. The only thing our religion differs in the vibration is that we don't believe in a Savior God. We don't believe that God saves us. We believe that we are a personal responsibility. It's one of our principles, is personal responsibility. You have your own personal responsibility. We don't believe that we are saved. We do believe that everyone goes to the spirit world, and then we answer for what we've done and what we've done. We can't be saved for what we've done. We are answered for what we've done in our lives.
We have certainly Sunday services and where demonstration of spirit and different metaphysical lectures and things of that nature. And there's a seance room in the back where different mediums will do table tipping and contact with spiritual mediums.
So what I do in a reading, and before clients or potential clients call me and come here, I let them know what I do is I connect with spirit around them, give them evidence of spirit, life guidance, as well as psychic information. And a lot of times people want to hear from somebody in particular. It's not how it works for me. It's just who's around during the reading. And they will know who they are because I do give evidence. And then I explain to them that I'm a clairvoyant, that I see, feel, know, and hear.
The spirit who comes forward will be the spirit that has the information that you're looking for. They're going to have something to say to you. Because I've had many say to me, well, I was hoping to hear from Uncle Fred. And I said, but even though there was a lot of, in the background, there was a lot of spirit there, because sometimes I'll say, you have a lot of people on the other side. But there will be one particular person who will come forward, or maybe two that will come forward. But they have the important things to tell you.
And I do see a gentleman around here. He almost feels like a grandfatherly type to me, and he doesn't seem that big of a man. And I don't know if he ever did the little quarter trick with you, where he got it from behind your ear, but he's showing me that. And so I do feel like he's around you quite a bit, especially like right before you go to sleep at night. And so just say, I love you, Grandpa. And he'll say, I love you too, darling. Yeah. And I just got goosebumps all over the place, so it's pretty big for me. And so I'm gonna say, you, again, are very creative, you're very intuitive. I feel like you feel a lot.
So spiritual healing is when a person is the conduit to allow the universal life force energy to come through them and help people, body, mind, and spirit. You're not actually physically doing the healing, you're just the conduit for the healing light to come through you.
Spiritual healing, we believe in hands-on healing, a connection of being a channel for God's healing energy to come through you, and you be the channel to propel the healing into the individual. We do spiritual healing. There's all kinds of different types of healing too, which is Reiki and pranic and hands-on, all this other types of healing, but it's all directly from God. It's from God, and we just channel the energy and place it into the individual, and then allow the energy to go wherever it's needed.
The Andrew Jackson Davis Building, constructed in 1905, is now the Welcome Center and bookstore at the entrance to Cassadaga. This is where visitors can schedule individual readings with resident mediums.
One of the functions that we have there before our 10:30 Sunday service here at Colby Temple is Lyceum, which is adult Sunday school. And again, we have different mediums, different healers, different people offering different perspectives on healing and mediumship and even the history of spiritualism, where they come and share their own perspectives. And the key thing about Lyceum is that we really try to create a place for fellowship, where people can be there together. And I think that's really important, particularly today, because so many people are on Zoom and so many people are on cell phones. And there's, in my opinion anyway, there's a real disconnect. And people are missing the warmth of being together as a community. And so the Andrew Jackson Davis Building is a place where we can be there together, and we have also workshops and classes going on over there.
A lot of people naturally are drawn to the bookstore and the things that we sell, but the people that work at our bookstore, they're chosen very carefully. And they're just very warm and friendly and non-judgmental with questions that people have, because you can imagine we get all kinds of questions in the bookstore. And it's just a very warm place, a very welcoming place for people. And so the bookstore, it other than Colby Temple, it really is the hub of the camp.
So Andrew Jackson Davis Building is where our camp bookstore is, and it's also the Andrew Jackson Davis Hall. So it's where we have more lectures, classes, workshops, different gatherings, community dinners, Thanksgiving dinners. It's just a great place to come and celebrate together.
That's where they go to find a medium. We sign up in the Welcome Center there too, and mediums that are working for the day or putting their names up on the board, and people come in and they find a name that they like, and they call them from the phone there in the Welcome Center and call and book a reading with them.
The business offices of the Southern Cassadaga Spiritualist Camp Meeting Association are located in the Summerland House, built in 1926.
So Summerland originally was a house, and then when the NSAC, National Spiritualist Association Churches, was a part of this organization, they actually used it for their main office. And then through the years, when they ended up going out of the organization, we became a private organization known as the SCSCMA, Southern Cassadaga Spiritualist Camp Meeting Association. At that point, it became our main office. So to this day, Summerlin is very important to us.
Freelance psychics, fortune tellers, and tarot card readers have set up shop directly across the street from the front entrance to Cassadaga, but they are not considered to be part of the spiritualist community.
No, sir. To be part of this community, you have to take the training. You put in your hours, you do your learning, you do your reading, you do your practice. You learn many things to build yourself up to be that medium that you want to be. So it takes a while. It just, like I said, it just doesn't happen overnight. But anyone on that side of the street can go in there and not have to have that license. Those of us who have gone through the system here, gone through the schooling here, do have license in our window, and we're issued that license every year that says, hey, this person is a certified medium in Camp Cassadaga.
They aren't part of the camp. They aren't licensed through the organization. They haven't gone through school through the organization, so they aren't licensed here. But we're still friends. We still talk to everybody. And they are just doing the work in a different way, that's all. They use different ways to communicating with spirit, but it is how they communicate with spirit. I mean, and people will search you out. You'll get, it's natural law in this business. So whoever is supposed to show up will show up. So if they need to go across the street, they need to go across the street. If they need to come to us in this part of the organization, then they need to come to us. It's all natural law.
The spiritualists in Cassadaga believe that mediumship can be taught.
So as human beings and how God made us, and I say God, not all spiritualists will say God, because there's no dogma in the religion. So Lord, Mother, Father, God, infinite spirit, infinite intelligence. So as God made us, we can all see, feel, hear, touch, and talk with spirit. But does a person understand what they're seeing, feeling, hearing, and touching? The key is to understand those experiences. We have an education program here that helps people in doing so. So as we're made as human beings, we can choose to turn it off, not accept it. Usually our mind filters it. As we have experiences through our lives or things happen, it kind of unfolds for the communication with spirit. And a lot of people come here wanting to understand their experiences. Most of the people that come to my classes, they want to know why they're seeing things. Is this real? And when they come here to Cassadaga, they're around like-minded people and other people who have had these experiences. So they feel comfortable in opening up and talking about it. And in fact, by taking classes and stuff, it helps them have more control over what it is that they're involuntarily experiencing, so they don't have to be fearful of it. Instead, they can understand it better. So that's the key, that anyone can, as a human being, communicate with their loved ones, families, and friends. But the key is learning how to understand it.
Cassadaga is one of Florida's most unique historic communities. People from all walks of life and from many different belief systems come to this town to receive messages from people who have passed away through the mediums who live here. You've been watching Florida Frontiers, presented by the Florida Historical Society. Visit us anytime online at myfloridahistory.org. Thanks for joining us. I'm Ben Brotmarkle. The Florida Historical Society presents Florida Frontiers is made possible in part by the Jessie Ball DuPont Fund and by
The historic Rossiter House Museum and Gardens is in the O'Galley section of Melbourne, Florida. Preserved as it was in the early 20th century, historic tours of the Rossiter House include antiques, artifacts, and family heirlooms, and the 1865 Houston Family Cemetery. The last resident of the home was successful businesswoman and philanthropist Caroline P. Rossiter. The historic Rossiter House Museum and Gardens is available for weddings and other special events.